What's up, everyone? Anyway, today I will be covering UFC 271, Adesanya versus Whitaker 2, and just, a couple other topics that are going to come up. And by the way, sorry about the RBY DeSanto video. They wrestled again, so I'll have to incorporate that into my analysis. But yeah, it's been a huge delay, and I've kind of gotten a lot of stuff coming up in my spare time. Uh, and the breakdowns have become very sporadic, so I'm very sorry about that. I'm going to be releasing some more middleweight related videos in the build up to UFC 271, even though I'll be very busy, so watch out for those. So I'm pretty excited actually. This is going to be a pretty good card. I might miss the card unfortunately, but the fights I'm going to go into depth about are going to be obviously the main event, and I'll have like some brief talks about two other fights on the card. So without further ado, let's get started. I don't really have much to say about this one. It kind of seems like the fight that kind of shows that middleweight is kind of bad, but whatever. Blonde Brunson memes aside, Derek Brunson still is kind of he's kind of bad at phase shifting still, and he's obviously kind of chinny, and Jared Cannonier hits hard. Cannonier has looked okay as a defensive wrestler lately. He hasn't. Gastelum's a fine wrestler, but he's kind of undersized for middleweight. Um, it's really a question of, is Brunson going to get caught because he sucks at phase shifting on a level change, and do I trust him to finish the takedown if he manages to get it? And I'm just going to be really, really brief about this. I don't think so. Cannonier is probably going to knock him out at some point. And Cannonier, Cannonier only has like okay takedown defense, if I recall correctly. But, I think it'll be enough because I can't really trust Brunson. I am kind of pulling for Brunson though because the blonde Brunson memes are really funny. So that's my only thoughts on that. Derek Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa is kind of a meme fight. It kind of just shows that heavyweight is a meme division. Uh, it's here's the thing. I'm not gonna say much on this. Like I'm gonna say what Tai Tuivasa should do, and then I'm gonna say the thing that I should say with every Derek Lewis fight, which is Tuivasa should kick his legs up, and he should be able to straight up outstrike him and outdo him because Tuivasa's not terrible. At the same time, he got rocked by Greg Hardy of all people. So I don't know. Derek Lewis by flying Gogo Plata. That's my prediction. All right, that's going to be my prediction. See ya for this one. And the main event, the rematch between Jisrael Adesanya and Robert the Mega Chad. Okay, look, my bias aside, as some of you who follow me on Twitter know, I like Whitaker much more than I like Adesanya. I'm going, all memes aside, all jokes aside, I'm going to have to be extremely honest and extremely unbiased on this. So to prepare, first of all, obviously I rewatched the first fight, Adesanya versus Whitaker 1. I rewatched I rewatched Whitaker versus Till, parts of it. Adesanya's last outing against Vittori. I've seen Adesanya versus Blachowicz like 50 times, by the way. And I watched Whitaker versus Gastelum. So some people say, oh, Robert's just fighting guys who are not on his level. Others say he's improved a ton. I am of the opinion that it is both. I think Whitaker has improved a decent amount, but I also think that he's fighting guys who he's kind of going to beat. So, before I say this, I do think Whitaker is physically diminished since the Yoel days. He's noticeably slower. I think his defensive reactions are kind of gone, and he seems to be yeah, like I said, he's a lot slower, which is understandable because of the two Yoel fights. Now, Whitaker versus Adesanya 1 is kind of those fights where it's competitive for a while, but then you kind of have this terrifying sense that it's going to end soon. Kind of like Cormier versus Jones 2, where Cormier is doing pretty well with, he just rushed up and started punching him in the face until Jones head kicked him into oblivion. And you kind of got this vibe that Cormier is slowly losing this fight. But onto and it's kind of a similar thing with Adesanya versus Whitaker because Whitaker was blitzing him, he was landing his jab at certain points, but then slowly Adesanya started to get his timing down. He started counter jabbing him at certain points. He started, you know, checking his kicks or countering his kicks. He started weaving out of the way of his blitzes better, and eventually he landed that infamous counterpunch that you know knocked Whitaker out. So you have that, but then you have the fact that Adesanya was figured out on the feet, or at least made to look very stupid on the feet by a much poorer striker than him in Jan Blachowicz. I'll probably be making a video sometime soon about how much the weight played into Adesanya's loss to Blachowicz, but basically what I think is I don't think it had any part in the striking because Adesanya has faced similar hitters before in Yoel Romero, and I just don't see how the power could have made a difference. Blachowicz, I'm going to go more into his performance in another video, but essentially what he did was he took parts where Adesanya had looked bad and he just blew them wide open. He punished him for switching stances naked with kicks. He counterpunched him a lot. He jabbed his face off. He didn't let Adesanya build on anything because he bit on all his feints backwards, and he stayed defensively responsible by parrying punches and checking kicks. So there's that. Now, I do think it's kind of a question of what can Robert do that he did well in the first fight, and how can he leverage that? How can he leverage that along with what Blachowicz did so well against Adesanya? Now, Adesanya versus Vettori 2 was the weirdest fight I've seen in a long time. It's like the closest clean sweep ever because Adesanya pretty clearly won every round, but at the same time, it felt like he barely won each round, even though he was in control of the whole fight. It was weird. It was weird. But what really interested me, because Vettori is just kind of a durable boxer with no cage cutting, what interested me is that Vettori was able to get him down with open shots. He failed on all his on the cage grappling, but he was able to catch kicks and take Adesanya down. He just could not control him on the ground because Vettori just kind of has an okay top game. Now, Rob has looked largely the same, like I said, but like a more improved version. He looked good as a counterpuncher against Cannonier, although that is, to be fair, it is Cannonier. He obviously looked really good against Kelvin. He seems to have cleaned up those wild overhands that cost him against Adesanya. He seems to be blitzing slightly more intelligently. He's feinting a lot more. He looks like a more improved version of the same fighter. And his wrestling seems to have improved a little bit. Now, the question is, what can he do to Adesanya? Well, the first point, like I said, punishing naked stance switches with kicks. Rob can definitely do that. He did that once or twice against Cannonier. And he did do it like once maybe against Adesanya in the first fight. And speaking of the first fight, when he disguised his entries, it worked. He counter jabbed off a leg kick one time and made Adesanya look stupid. Adesanya wasn't able to just blast leg kicks because you can't just naked leg kick Robert Whitaker. He is too smart for that. But here's the thing. First of all, Whitaker, he kind of stayed too long in the pocket. Adesanya got his timing down and eventually, knocked him out. He didn't jab much. He didn't hit the body. He just kind of headhunted and ran in there, which works against Kelvin Gastelum, but it will not work against a guy like Adesanya. Now, Whitaker did have some success blitzing. He was able to back Adesanya up a couple times. He was able to tag him once or twice. But for the most part, like by the beginning of the second round, like Adesanya was avoiding everything he threw at him in said blitzes. And he knocked him down twice. Remember that. So if I'm Whitaker, I would say, first of all, jab. Jab, 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 jab. Jab to the head, jab to the body. Number two, only blitz extremely sporadically. You need to disguise your intents with feints. You need to craft smart entries in order to get in order to hit Adesanya, because you did have some success blitzing, but you did it too much, and you were not very intelligent with it at times. So Adesanya got your timing down and killed you with a punch. Now, the big thing is you need to wrestle him. You need to wrestle him. Adesanya practically falls over on his back when you time an open space shot. Couple reasons. The most obvious reason is because he sometimes leans back to avoid stuff. And so from there, Whitaker needs to go for a single or a double and get him to the ground. Now, that's kind of the game plan for Rob. Punish him for naked stance switches. Stay defensively responsible because you were able to do that at times in the first fight by countering on his leg kicks. Time your blitzes intelligently, craft them intelligently, play with transitional work to wrestle him, and jab his face off. Now, I'm going to say why I don't think Rob can do that. First of all, I don't trust his top game. He just kind of has an okay top game, and Adesanya is quite good off his back. If if Whitaker was, if he had a rock hold top game, I would pretty confidently pick him, but he does not. The other thing is that he likes to body lock, and Adesanya is very good at defending body locks. Whitaker's shots are just kind of okay. He's extremely strong and physical with his body lock, but I don't really trust him to get it, as opposed to, say, a single leg or a double leg, which I also don't trust him to get. Okay, I trust him to get it, just not with any consistency. And the fourth, whatever, thing is that even if he times his blitzes, Adesanya is quite intelligent, and I just see him catching Whitaker several times. And even if Whitaker doesn't die, he's still going to win Adesanya rounds. So, with the heavy heart, I think my pick is Izzy TKO fourth round after a competitive fight. I think it will be much more competitive than the first one because I trust Rob to come out smart. I trust him to wrestle. I trust him to jab. I just don't think it'll be enough, unfortunately. So, yeah, I hate to admit it, but Izzy TKO round 3 or 4. Anyway, now is the part of the podcast where I'm going to answer a question that my friend asked me. Caught MMA. Favorite video game? Skylanders, for the nostalgia value. I'm very sorry. Changes to make to the scoring criteria. Quantifying when attritional damage overcomes immediate damage. I assume you mean like a flash knockdown versus consistent damage the whole time. I think it should be who came the closest to a finish, if that makes any sense. Because if that flash knockdown almost like you almost finished him, then yes, I think it would overcome, say, a guy winning the entire round. So someone like Cormier versus Gustafsson, where Gustafsson landed that huge knee. Gustafsson would definitely win that round, I think, because he came close to finishing Cormier, even if Cormier won the rest of the round. But let's say the fight is going like Holloway versus Cater round 4, and Cater knocks him down once. Can we all agree that Holloway would still win the round because he just beat the dog shit out of him? Now, like, if Cater almost finishes him there, then you could have an argument for, say, a draw in the round, or, even him winning the round. But if it's just a flash knockdown, then, I got to give it to Holloway. So it would be the closest to the fight ending because I would say that's the closest to the damage. That'd be the most damage that happens. It's kind of like just laying on a guy for half the round would win you the round, but unless you get the shit beaten out of you early on. So that's kind of that's my ramble on the scoring criteria. Other things I would change is I would have kind of like it wouldn't be a 10-point must system. It would be it'd be 5-5, right? So that'd be the points, and then depending on the performance of the round, you can make it a 6-4 round, you can make it a 5-4 round, etc. It would be almost a scale because here's the thing: like just 10-9 and 10-8 is too big. That's why you have that whole war over who won between Romero and Whitaker in the second fight because is that a 10-8 round or is that a 10-9 round? I don't know, but that's even if you say that round that you gave to Yoel as a 10-9, the one where he knocked him down and beat him up for a while, that is way, way worse than freaking, I don't know, Jones versus Cormier round 1 of their first fight, So, I guess under my new system, Jones versus Cormier round 1 of the first fight would be like 5-4. And then, this Whitaker Romero one would be like 6-4 or something like that. And you would tally it up at the end of the fight. I'm fine with round by round scoring personally, because like it'll give us a paper trail. Because a corruptor should say, "Herder, I think he won the fight because I think he won the fight," In order to beat the champ, you have to beat the champion. I also think that round by round scoring is extremely flawed at times because it doesn't tell you when you're down. So we need to have open scoring. This isn't really part of scoring criteria, but I also think that the judges should be able to see the fight from like a balcony or something because it's going to be really hard to like look around and from above. So yeah. Change up the point system, open scoring, a more consistent criteria of closest to a finish in terms of immediate versus attritional damage, and yeah, yeah. Now, best gym in MMA right now was your last question. It really depends. Pure striking, you got to go city kickboxing. If you want like good punching mechanics and good footwork and like good outfighter tactics, I would say Team Elevation. Trevor Whitman. In terms of like overall, I don't know. Probably Hooft because like Hooft is so good. Like he creates cohesive games for fighters. Like you can see the contrast between him and Usman. Him and Whitman with Usman because under Hoof, Usman had a cohesive game of I'm going to pressure you into a clinch, I'm going to beat the shit out of you from the clinch, and I'm going to wrestle you. Under Whitman, he's just like a bad outfighter with who can wrestle every now and then. Look at what Hoof did for Chandler. He gave him actual single shot setups instead of just a weird boxer who just ran straight at people. Or look at what Hoof did with Burns. Burns is quite a good counterpuncher. He's quite good in exchanges. He's hellish to top game, so it all like fits together in a nice way, is what I'm saying. And obviously you have Greg Jones in that camp too. And then you have someone like Luque with Henry Hooft and Greg Jones, who pressure footwork, counters. I mean, it's all about the cohesive game instead of your individual skills. I would consider on an individual basis someone like Tony Ferguson has more skills than Volkanovski, but Volkanovski is the better striker than him by such a hilarious margin because he has such a more cohesive game. Or John Jones and Volkanovski. Being creative and throwing cool shit is only significant if you can integrate it consistently. There's a reason why Yair Rodriguez is not an elite striker. So that's it for the questions I've gotten. Now I want to rant about something real quick. John Jones rating. This is more in conjunction with a post I made where I said that Prime Weidman would probably beat him. And this is going to be more about how Prime Weidman would probably beat him. But I got a lot of flack for that take, and here's why. Because people have this idea that John Jones is a top 5 MMA striker. And the other thing is that, like I said before, it's all about the cohesion of your game instead of if you can do cool shit. So, I'm just going to say this. Weidman would outstrike him. Jones is impossible to wrestle, but I honestly think Weidman would outstrike him because Weidman is a much better pressure fighter than DC by every metric. He has actual footwork. He has hurting kicks. He has open space shots. He integrates it. He integrates everything so well. Like DC has the open space shots, but he doesn't have the footwork. He doesn't have the hurting. He doesn't have any of the cohesiveness that Weidman did. And DC had a lot of success with Jones by just running straight at him in their second fight. He just said, "Fuck wrestling. I'm just going to run straight at you and try and tag you." And it took Jones a while to figure it out because Jones relies so much on his reach that he cannot pressure with his offense. He can run you into it, but only if you're shorter than him because he cannot counterpunch worth a shit. I have come to the conclusion that Jones is kind of an example of what happens when you have everything but a cohesive game when it comes to your striking. By the way, I'm talking purely about striking here. Jones has a ton of weapons, and you can tell that he's an amazing athlete because he knows like 50 different moves. But he also has fight IQ, I would say. He knows when he's down, he knows when his opponent's habits are, etc. But he has no like game that he can impose on people. He's just out there throwing fun shit, and it works against Rampage, and it works against Rashad because those guys are much shorter than you, and you can just tag them from a distance and run them into your favorite moves. Intercepting teep kicks to the body, spinning elbows, hand fighting the elbows, etc. But it really reveals itself when, say, the Gustafsson fight, when you have a guy who's as long as him, has actual lateral movements, so you can't just intercept him with kicks, and is boxing your fucking face off. And Jones still won because he was still a good fighter. He outvolumed him. He took advantage of his bad habits. The infamous spinning elbow. But it made him look really bad. And then you have the Santos fight, which really showed that Jones cannot counter worth a shit because he tried to pressure him. Thiago ran at him, and Jones couldn't just run him into his offense because he could not counter, and Thiago wouldn't give him any space to think. The big difference, you can kind of see the big difference how he applies his elbows versus someone like Tony Ferguson. Because Tony Ferguson's whole thing is the jankiness of his game gets in your face. He pressures you. He hits your body. He ruins you with elbows. He ruins you with He ruins you with combinations to the body and head. And all that combined with the long reach that Tony Ferguson has, with his hand fighting into his elbows, that's what makes him effective. Obviously, Tony Ferguson is not an elite striker, but the comparison still stands. Jones doesn't have any of that. He doesn't have consistent body work. He doesn't have intelligent pressure tactics. He doesn't have good back foot ring craft or consistent counters. He just does stuff because he's a super athlete with a reach half a mile long. So, he has no game he can impose on people. So when you lack cohesion, but you have fight IQ and physical attributes and a bajillion weapons, it ends up in a really ugly, disjointed striking game. Which is why, like I said, I would pick Weidman to beat him. Like any functional striker, who can avoid the wrestling, is going to give John Jones a really difficult time, assuming they don't gas out and stuff. Like I would pick Jan Blachowicz to beat Jones up early. Do I think Jones would eventually pull it away with body work and just being unkillable? Maybe. I think he could, but it would really expose a lot of things about Jones on the feet early on. So yeah, that was just kind of my rant about how people overrate Jones to a massive extent. He has no defense other than framing, no cohesion to his game, just a bunch of cool weapons. But anyway, that's it for my rant. All right, I think this was a better podcast than normal. I think I had an impromptu rant at the end, answered some questions, and gave you my picks. Bye bye.